welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Welcome, everybody, to Intersect Radio. Oh, man, it's 2019.
Oh, it is.
It is.
Wow.
You know, it got here pretty fast, I think, and it's been drop kicked into my life, and the ball hasn't hit the ground yet. So maybe next week, sometimes things will kind of chill out and we can get this motor scooter running properly.
Seems like yesterday was Y2K. Where did Y2K go?
I know. I think it exploded in somebody's computer.
Did you turn off your computer?
No, I did not.
I didn't either.
But I had friends who moved.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend that stockpiled their whole basement like a bunker. But then it was great. Like, they lived off the rations for the next 5 years if it wasn't perishable. Had batteries forever after that. Anytime I needed AA, I knew where to go.
Yeah. They didn't have any of Jim Baker's, like, nacho cheese.
No, none of that. Yeah. Some Velveeta, though.
Yeah. I don't think he had come up with that concoction yet.
No.
But I think that's where he got his idea.
Oh, man.
Okay, folks, here at Intersect Radio today, we have my good friend, guitarist extraordinaire, connection.
Keep going, man.
Yeah, I could go on and on. I could do accolades for 45 minutes,
okay.
But then we wouldn't get a chance to talk, see what you're doing. Today is the first time we're doing a video with this program. For you who still believe in Santa Claus, he brought me a GoPro camera on Christmas.
Oh.
Yeah.
I believe.
So we're using it today and testing it out. But Erick Cole is my guest.
Good to be here.
I've been working with Erick now for almost a year.
Yeah.
With Sir Kevin Max. And we have toured the United States, parts of the United States, had some great times, great stories. And we even do a church gig together. That's occasionally.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's been very cool. And so, because I don't know a lot about Erick, I thought this would be the ideal setting to get to know him better, find out, about your life, childhood, and all that sort of stuff. And as I found,
you could have just asked me.
I could have. But see, all these other people, they wouldn't be in on the conversation. So This is the perfect time. So welcome to Intersect, Erick.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So let's start.
Our first gig, real quick, was actually September. So over a year we have now.
That's right.
A year plus.
That was that gig in that little college in Kentucky.
That's right.
Was it Kentucky?
It was Cleveland, Tennessee.
And just so happened your sister went to school there.
That is an amazing memory. That's exactly right. And got married on that campus.
On the campus.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. That's a great memory. Well, if we take it tragic from there, because you probably don't remember this fact, but the next morning I had to be back late that night. There was no way. We weren't planning on staying anyway, but I had to be back because my wife and I flew to Las Vegas. And we were in a hotel room when the shooting happened.
When the shooting started.
A few floors right beneath the shooter. But anyway, I don't want to take that off into that course. But that happened right after. Well, that's all
right. But I didn't know why you were in Vegas, so I thought maybe you were in Vegas to play or something. And I was going, man, what's up?
Yeah.
and then you let us know that you just happened to be in the hotel.
Right, yeah. I had a lot of friends that actually knew people that were playing that day on the stage, but I just happened to be there for an event that my wife had. I was there just supporting her and using it as an excuse to write songs in the big bathrooms that they have. I love bathroom writing, at the Mandalay Bay. That verb.
Yeah.
Every song sounds great in verb, at least until you get it out in the sunlight.
Right. How long did you stay in Vegas after the show?
It got weird. We looked into leaving right away. She was in a conference. Long story short, her conference was based internationally, so a lot of people had come from far away to be there. And everyone convened after that happened to figure out, do we leave? Do we shut this down? The airport was crowded. It was just pretty much a logistical nightmare to get out easily. And we kind of figured, as somber as this was, some of the international people were staying, so we decided to stay. It was only another day or two. And it was easier to stay, as well as it kind of, in a weird way, helped process, just in our own way. I think it helped process what had happened, what we had seen.
Were you in lockdown or anything?
We were locked down. So you were
in the same hotel as the
not
shooter?
only the same hotel, but we were just a few floors right below.
Wow.
And so the first, a couple of shots, actually, I had just sort of dozed. And I jumped up out of the bed. And I actually, for the split second, was irritated because I thought they were shooting off fireworks, the concert that was going on over there. And, it was just, I jolt out of bed, and then for a split second I thought, well, it's one thing, it's loud, I'm a musician, I love loud music. It's another thing to just start big fireworks or whatever. Right. So I went to, it took only a few seconds to realize, though, after that, what was really happening. So I went to the window, lights on in the room, and I'm staring out the window and kind of looking over at the concert before they even realized what was happening, Really? In pretty rapid order, though, my wife was yelling, get down on the ground, because at that point we didn't know what was happening, but we knew we heard shots right above us. We knew, but we didn't know if it was someone shooting up, down, if a thing. Anyway, yeah, it was a heavy experience, but we stayed about another day and a half there.
Wow.
But, at that point, it was the safest place to be in the world.
Right.
So, it was. Very tragic. Very, very sad.
The irony of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very tragic.
It was weird. Channel 4 News found me. This is a side story. It's a little bit funny. We're way off point now. I love it. Channel 4 News kind of, I don't know, it was Facebook and someone, I don't remember how, but I started getting calls from one of their, the news descended right away, and they were wanting to talk to anybody and everyone. So I actually agreed to talk and did this little interview that was on the news back here in Nashville. And the point of that isn't so much that as a couple weeks later, I get a text saying they really appreciated me being willing to talk, and they wanted to send me a little gift. And so they sent me a box. And I'm like, okay, I mean, this was a tragedy. I was happy to tell my story, but, it's like, it felt weird. I'm getting a gift for telling the story, So I opened up the box, and then it got even more bizarre, because in the box were a pair of Snowbird. Remember Snowbird?
Yeah.
Slippers. And 2 Snowbird fleece blankets.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, so the bizarreness of like being there for that tragic event and then talking to the news, and then I get a box of Snowbird swag.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know who Snowbird is, that's our weatherman's
it's like the school mascot for school closings when the weather, the snow days.
When it rains or snows or something.
Yeah. I used to love Snowbird, by the way.
Everybody used to love to see it when Snowbird came on, because that was like, no school tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was a great
But
feeling.
man, I'm glad you survived that and you weren't a part of that.
Yeah, me too.
Down at the concert.
Me too.
Having a Budweiser or something.
Yeah, well, my heart goes out to, obviously, lots of
people haven't gotten over that yet, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be over it either. If I lost a loved one, or,
even as an observer, it affects me to this day. Like when I, it's it's tainted. Like when I go to a concert, if it's I'm reminded constantly. I'm kind of looking around like,
Mm-hmm.
it just comes up. I'll just put it that way.
Oh, yeah.
I went to Ascend shortly after that with our good friend Steve Hindelong
Yeah.
to see the National, and
Uh-huh.
beautiful night in Nashville. It was around my birthday, so it was last May, and just sitting on the grass, and all of a sudden it was like, of course, I start looking at all the buildings around us. It's just too bad that affects your day to day after an event like that. It shows up,
Yeah, it does. It changes your thinking.
Anyway, on that cheery note, the point of that was we played our first show together right before that, and I'll let you get back on track.
No, we're on track because we want to talk about you.
Oh,
and that's something most people never experience. So I'm glad you were here to share that story.
Yeah.
But I want to go back, to remember that day, like the doctor spanked you on your hiney.
I actually think I do, but everyone thinks I'm crazy for that. They're like, "There's no way you remember that," and I'm like, "But I do."
All right, where were you born? Take us back.
Okay, yeah, I was born. I always say I was born in Lebanon, Ohio, but which is a town about 20 miles north of Cincinnati. It's where my family's from. But the reality is, I think the story goes, at that point, there was no hospital for births. So I was technically born in a little adjoining town called Wilmington. And that's about as exciting as that gets. So Lebanon's a lovely little town, though. And I appreciate my Ohio roots the older I get, if that makes any sense. No disrespect to Ohio, but I grew up in Nashville. My parents moved here.
How'd you get to Nashville?
Well, my dad is a songwriter and an amazing musician, and a Christian artist as well.
I didn't know that.
Singer-songwriter, kind of acoustic guitar player, primarily. And so I always joke that I just work at the family store when people ask me how I really got into music. But it's still there's still interesting parts of the story, but the reality is my dad, so when I was 7, like most, he had the dream of coming to Nashville and really seeing what could be. And, in short order, he was doing the publishing thing, and, he was he was on Impact Records. You remember them? They were part of Word Records. And
yeah. I remember the logo.
So he was kind of the Nashville story in a lot of ways, of moving to town. And
when was this?
Yeah. So we first moved to Nashville in 1981.
Okay.
So I would have been about 7. There was it's not worth telling, but there was a few short years that we also moved to Florida, but that was a whole other story. And then for primarily grew up in Nashville from age 7 on. And that's what my dad did. But yeah, it was, it's interesting. I took all that as normal, because it was my normal.
Yeah.
It was, you get a little older and a little more experience, and you start going, wow, I appreciate the fact that I had a dad that was, brave enough to follow his dreams and desires. And
your mom went along with it. Huh?
And my mom went along with it, which is that's an interesting part of the story. I feel like I'm equal parts them, and they couldn't be more different, really. My mom's the accountant, and I don't mean that in a bad way, Mom, if you're listening to this later, but I just mean that she's very accountant and numbers and brain, and my dad's like, you're a stereotypical artist of, I'll get there when I get there, and just where's that thing? I have no idea.
How much is that guitar?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I want that guitar.
That's true. No, it's interesting. When I started, but what's interesting about growing up is when I started playing music, I went through that, my version of, early teen, I guess you'd call it angst, was needing to establish my own identity. So I knew I loved music, and I knew I loved it the way that I saw my dad love it, but I needed to be different, So it's like my dad plays guitar, and I love the bass, and I'm not like my dad. I am different than my dad. It was like that goofy needing to have my own identity kind of thing, Of course, I love my dad, and I love every comparison I can get towards my dad.
Is he still living?
Yes, he is. I mean, he's still. It's amazing. He's getting his master's degree right now.
From where?
Yeah, he's up in Stanton, Virginia. And
really?
Yeah, it's the Quaker University up there. But
master's in what?
Social justice.
I
mean, we could go on for 2 hours and talk about the interesting life my dad has had. He still does music. He still he does dates, and he's still playing every day and writing. And in fact, we might actually make a record together finally, which would be wonderful. He has a real heart for social justice, and it came through the experience. I believe it's been his whole life, but it was amplified through an experience that he had when he was asked to. I'm not laughing, but it makes me chuckle how crazy these stories sound. He was asked to kind of walk with a person on death row to their. I know it's heavy, right? And he did that, and it was a life-changing experience for him.
Why was he asked to walk?
That's actually a great question.
What put him in that situation?
I believe that it came about through my uncle's a lawyer, his brother, and I believe that it was put on my dad's radar through my uncle. If I'm telling that incorrectly, Dad, and you're listening, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. My uncle's a defense attorney, and so I think it was put on his radar that way. And basically, it was like, this guy has, no one's visiting him, and and I think this would be great, a good opportunity for you. And so my dad did it, and it was something he said that, he has done it again, but at the time he was like, I wouldn't trade that, but I hope to never be in that position again, to walk with somebody.
He didn't know the guy, huh?
Didn't know the guy beforehand, but got to know him over the course of his last stays of execution and this whole intense time, got to know him really well.
So he didn't just show up the day of.
No. Okay. This was, I don't want to sell it short, but I want to say almost a year and a half, or maybe it was longer than that.
Okay.
So, he got to the point where you just see in the heart, obviously we let other people argue about justice and, for families and victims of crime and all that kind of stuff. And that's, even though it's important, that's really not the point. The point is when you actually get to see the heart of a human, no matter what has happened in their life, and especially when it's turned and changed or whatever. So anyway, I guess that was, so my dad's still, it's very inspiring. He is a true artist in that sense. It's music, whatever he's passionate about, he paints too. It's wow. So that was a big shadow to grow up in too, though, and even though I was proud of my dad, it was a lot of, I think the reason I had that reaction when I started playing music was I wanted my own identity, because it was kind of, it loomed large,
When did you start playing guitar? When did you pick it up?
I would pick it up here and there, even as a kid, because there was always one around. But I would say around age 13, I started getting really serious about music, maybe even 12. So not as young as some, and also not as late as others, I guess. And
you were here at
yes,
that time.
I was here. I went to a little school north of Nashville. And what was interesting was it was a really small little private Christian school that I went to, and there wasn't like a big music program there, and it was a really small school, so there wasn't a lot of fellow classmates to start bands with, and and so in an interesting way, I feel like at the time I felt like it was a bit of a detriment, and I wonder now I like that experience that I could kind of do it on my own with my favorite records, and sit upstairs at our house and just try to play along to favorite songs and records and things like that,
So you advocate playing along with the records?
I really do. I think all forms are valuable, but there's, I don't know, not to sound like a lot of people that are getting a little bit older start to say, something's lost today when you can just quickly Google how to do something. And I think there's great benefit to that, but I can also understand like what it's like to try to back the song up again to this certain point,
yeah,
and then hope that time around you're going to get the note right. Like, and then if it might be this, especially when they're close, like it's in the key,
Yeah.
Anyway, I think there's a lot of benefit to
I think
that.
there's something lost when you don't use the technology.
Yeah.
Because there was not YouTube, and people used to learn songs by picking up the needle and going back, trying to get that spot on the needle, and drop the needle in, and then get back to their instrument, and stuff like that. I have a good friend who was my best friend in high school, and we started playing musical instruments together. He played bass, I played drums.
Wow!
He got this great gig with this band called the Sidewinders. So their theme song, of course, was Lee Morgan's Sidewinder. And in that song is a bass solo.
Okay.
And he had to learn the solo.
Oh, yeah.
So I was the guy who was picking up the needle.
Oh, cool.
He'd go, stop. Okay. And I pick it up.
Oh, cool.
And he's like, okay, put it back down.
Yeah. I think there's something that refines you that way. I really do.
Yeah. And for the people who use that same method to transpose.
Right.
But now you got all these tools for transposition.
I mean, I won't lie. There's been a moment where I'm doing a gig and someone's like, I want to do that song or whatever. And I've definitely benefited from like, cool, let me go YouTube real quick. In fact, I did a really interesting gig about a year ago. It was for a friend's, her dad's birthday. And this was a big party. And, we had to learn like 40, it was like his jukebox of his lifetime, and he was turning 80. We had to learn 45 songs with no rhyme or reason. It was just songs that he's loved his whole life across the genres, across everything, and that was a lot. It was intimidating, but it was a lot of fun to both listen and pick out, and there would be times where I'm running out of time. I'm just gonna have to YouTube, like what,
at least get the key
right. So I think it's all valuable, really. I look forward to. I love opportunities to sound like that guy, though, where I'm just like, kids today don't know what's happening. It's always a fun thing to say,
So you were in this. What high school did you go to here in Nashville?
We shouldn't leave that under the. No, it was called Metro Baptist School. It was. It is technically, but it's changed names because it's moved to Goodlettsville now. Of all things, it's not a school. It was my experience, so I'm grateful for it. It's not a place that I would. Where I'm at in my life now, that I would recommend to.
You wouldn't send your kids there.
Yeah, and that's it's just I'll just say it that way.
So you weren't playing any rock and roll in high school.
No, that's part of why I probably wouldn't recommend it. In fact, I remember real schools have real problems. Put it this way, we had they call them locker checks. You remember those? Like they just going to randomly. Mm-hmm. We had a locker check, and I got called into the principal's office. Big trouble here.
A guitar pick.
Well, no, but it was a little postcard. It was of U2 from Rattle and Hum.
Really?
And that was like,
that's
they were
there, man.
Right. It was a very legalistic scenario. And my parents, they were sending us there because, for them the idea was the best education possible, and and not that they adhered to. I mean, obviously I had the U2 postcard. It wasn't at home. It was a little different. It was the school was like super strict and everything, So I don't think I got in big trouble, but that was the point. That was the kind of the vibe there, that secular music, that whole thing, secular music. And
so when did you kind of leave the cocoon?
Which one, man? I'm still in it. It depends on which one you mean.
So so you're playing guitar.
Yeah.
How do you?
Well, I was playing bass first.
You playing bass,
and then I quickly, because I didn't have a lot of classmates to play music with as much, and I love bass to this day, and I still play it. But I kept getting drawn back to my dad's guitar because it was like it's fun to play bass to your favorite records, but with a guitar, I don't need to necessarily even play along with a record. I can actually play my own whole songs by myself on a guitar kind of thing,
But there was no band.
No band.
So how were you growing as a bassist or as a musician during your high school years?
Yeah. No, I mean, the growth with collaborating came after I was in college. And because high school years was, I call it the years where I was woodshedding, if you will. That's where I was playing along with records or playing to my favorite music, but it was solo. I was by myself. It was not communal. And I really longed for that, but that came pretty quickly right after high school. And then especially through college. And I went to Belmont University.
You went to Belmont.
Yeah, I did.
Ooh.
One of those.
Did you play around town?
I did, yeah. I remember my first gig live ever was this. I think it's now where that new convention center is. You remember when all that, before any of that was there, it was all those little brick industrial buildings and stuff. And without trying to be this, in hindsight, I basically did the classic Jim Morrison, I think it was him, but the story goes like he was so nervous his first show that his back's just to the audience the whole show. To me, I was just trying to lock in with the drummer, but I think the reality was I was really nervous. And so every picture, not that there's many, but every picture of that show, you see my back. And
really, you doing your Miles Davis impression.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The disrespect thing. It's like,
but yeah, so I started when in college. I started, I was in a couple bands and started playing around. The normal fare, 20, 25 people, and you felt great.
All in town?
All in town at first. That's actually a funny part of the story that leads into the Kevin stuff, really. It was a really interesting existence for me to go from playing local small things. I mean, our band, we'd venture out to Louisville, Kentucky, and far, far away like that. But it was interesting to go from these kind of smaller shows that you do to with no like sort of middle thing, because the next thing I did, and there's a lot of story in between this, but the next thing I did show wise was when I went out with, on the DC Talk solo tour, right as the guys started doing all their solo stuff, and Kevin and I had written all that. And so it was like the DC Talk show, and it was 3 tour buses and 4 semis, or actually back 4,
How did that work, the solo tour?
So, yeah, that was an interesting time. So it was kind of like they were, in my opinion, they were trying to prep everyone that they were about to take this break, And so the idea was to go out as DC Talk headlining, and then all of the, 3 guys do basically opening for themselves kind of thing, And so, and I'm trying to remember now, it's kind of funny. I think they would like rotate who got to the order of that opening slot,
So it would be 3 opening acts before DC Talk.
That's right.
Every night.
That's right.
How many songs?
It was a little bit shorter though, because I think it was at most 25 minutes. Yeah.
So
it got weird.
Each or something?
No more than, I remember about 4 in that part of the show. Which is interesting because then I got a little spoiled by that, even though I love to play. Then after that, it was like the first time we're doing a normal set of like 12 songs. And I'm like, what? 12 songs? I do 4 to 5 at the most now,
Did you guys talk to my accountant?
That's right. Yeah, that's less. That's definitely less money per song for sure.
Right.
But you do 12. But it's interesting to think about, right? If you look at the Beatles sets while they were touring, they never played over 20 minutes. Isn't that funny? Right. Shea Stadium, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's wow.
And you couldn't hear them.
Well, right. There was nights where I wished you couldn't hear us, but mostly it was good.
But yeah, I don't think anybody during that time was accustomed to doing big shows
or long shows,
like an hour or so.
Yeah.
Even Elvis and those guys, they all toured together and they do a couple of 2 or 3 tunes,
right?
Be gone.
The other thing that's I feel like lost that is bizarre to me to think about is, do you remember the days of like an afternoon show and an evening show? Like Elvis used to do that.
Yeah, I did that at the Apollo.
Did you?
On the weekends.
Wow.
3 shows a day.
Wow.
Saturday and Sunday.
Wow. I think we're so spoiled by getting in the mindset of the show tonight, right? You know, everything's leading up to the show tonight.
Right.
You know, hanging out in the dressing room before we're about to play the show. But then it's like you're just in a groove of like, well, it's show number 1, show number 2. It's amazing to me.
Right.
You know.
Right. See, I had the opposite thing of doing it the hard way first and then getting, living long enough to experience a tour with a bus and semis and all that sort of stuff. I come from station wagons and U-Hauls.
Well, I worked my way back to that in short order, no doubt. It was I jokingly call it my touring life was definitely born breech, though. You know, it went from 20 people to an arena.
To start, tour buses to sound check, big arenas.
And then it would be the nice van after that, and it was like, okay, so I can get used to, I can handle, all the way down to like
good food, good lasagna.
Yeah. But hey, man, the last thing we did together, we were on a nice RV, right?
Ooh, Bilbo wagons.
We give a shout out to Bilbo.
Bilbo wagons. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Especially the ride back.
Yes, except that we were. I'd like to say to every listener that you got me sick.
Well, yeah, I did. I'll take full credit for that because I was, my dog got sick yesterday. We woke up at 5:30 yesterday morning to this awful sound, and my wife Susan goes, "What's that?" And our biggest dog's name is Nellie. I went, "Oh, that's just Nellie. She's just shaking. She just got up and."
Shaking it off.
Like the way they do, they shake and then they lay it down again.
Right.
She said, "Oh, no, I heard something else." And so she jumps out of bed, runs in the room where Nellie is, and starts calling me and shouting, come here. Nellie is laying on her bedding, shaking. And she's like urinated all over herself and stuff like that. And she was really sick. And so later on in the day, after things cooled down, I realized that that's where the saying comes from. I was sick as a dog.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Because I was sick as a dog.
Yeah, you were.
And
then I was.
Right.
I
was like that.
I don't like going to the doctor. I don't think anyone does, but I really don't. So it's funny. I like to do the, if there's something going on with me, I like to do what I call the roundabout doctor visit. And so in this case, since I knew that I probably, so since I thought I got it from you, I better call Aaron and see how he's doing so I can see how I'm going to fare, I remember calling you and I got a little worried after that.
Yeah. It was kind of bad. It's kind of bad.
We got through it.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So how many tour dates did you do in the solo tour?
Man, that tour was back in, I don't remember, to be honest. I was back in when did we do that? We put out Stereotype B came out in 2001, so that was 2002. It was a couple months, but with a couple stringer dates after. It was all in States, but it was right after that ended that Kevin, like the next 2 years, I feel like we were overseas a lot. Yeah, in different places. I mean, all over too.
Just you and Kevin.
Yeah, some with a band, sometimes just the two of us. But
it wasn't like the DC Talk.
Not with DC Talk, thing. Right. Yeah, that was all in state. It was a beautiful time.
And how long did you and Kevin do that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of still doing it, right? But that intense period, though, it was really intense initially, as far as it was my main thing for a while, and because there was so much going on, and I also had input, into all the aspects. It wasn't like I'm just hired to come in and play this thing. I mean, Kevin and I were writing songs all the time. Most of those early records are, co-writes, and So we're writing, and then we're also doing shows, and we were friends too, you know? So, I mean, it was like we are friends, sound like past, but so it was like a full encompassing thing, in other words, which is, you know, which was great. And also, a little discombobulating, I guess, for lack of a better word, because then at some point, you know, life does its thing. Like, I want to go over here, or he wants to do something different. And it's, you know, that kind of close working relationship can take a minute to get your head around, like, oh, right. We're, you know, we are great friends, but we're business partners too. And then we're going to do something different now. So, but I wouldn't trade it, man. We were traveling all the time, writing stuff all the time. Music took us, especially those early solo years for him. It took us, you know, all the way from Africa to South America, you know, all of Europe, multiple times. And
cool.
Yeah. So it was a wonderful time.
That's great.
Yeah,
man. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then,
I knew you guys had spent some time together.
Yeah.
I hear a story every now and then.
I have a sister, you know, with, you know, an actual biological sister. And, but I call Kevin's definitely like the brother that I never had, you know? And I love our relationship now. We're like just good friends. You know, it's really gotten to a sweet place, I think. But like any relationship, you know, it had its funny brother moments early on, you know, that were, you know, we would just drive each other crazy. I'm sure he would say the same thing right now. So, you know.
Yeah, especially if it's only two of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't it? You don't have the other guys to like hang with or throw stuff off of. You know, it's just two of you. You know.
Yeah, there was a lot of those shows that were just two of us. There was a lot that we did band stuff too, and it was, all the dynamics were interesting for sure.
Well, tell us about some of the other things you've done besides all the stuff you did with Kevin. I mean, you know, you lived out in L.A.
13 years.
When did you move to L.A.? Was this during the DC Talk stuff?
It was after that, but it was still when Kevin and I were creatively doing a lot of stuff. I had always wanted to live in L.A. just because I always liked when I was there. Not like in any kind of I don't like Nashville kind of way, but just like, hey, this would be great if the opportunity arose to be out here for a while. And that opportunity came up, and late 03, early 04, I moved out. Kevin lived out there for a little while too, so it was conducive to already working together and having things going on. And
why did you move?
Literally just for a new experience, you know, and to work. And that I had stuff kind of already happening. It wasn't like just showing up and like, you know, cold calling and, you know, so it was the right time to do that if I wanted that experience. Now, the fact that it turned into 13 years was pretty special, but, and unexpected, you know. I didn't really go out with an agenda of only this. Actually, I did. I went out with the agenda of at least lasting a year, because I had there's this Nashville stigma. I don't know if it still exists or not, but I was under it anyway, where it's like, if you can't last a year and you come back to Nashville, it means, you know, you can't hang or something, you know. So I at least had that. But in short order, man, just beautiful experience started happening. I met Richard Swift, you know, and this is when he was just starting his solo thing, and he actually played a couple shows with Kevin, you know, we did some Viper Room residency shows with Kevin, and Dickie was playing keyboards on those shows, and so he called me up one day and he goes, "Man, I've got some jams." He called them jams, and would you be interested in playing? And I'm like, sure. But it was at the point where I was saying sure to everything because I had some things going, but I'm new to LA. He sends me the songs. I was blown away, mouth on the floor. Like, oh, you mean you have songs, you have jams, you know? So that was it was a special time because he had a couple hotel cafe dates going, and it went from like, you know, he started packing that out. And then the next thing he was selling out, you know, residencies at other places. And then it was regionally. And then in short order, we're going up the West Coast. And then we're actually, well, they want us in Spain and they want us in, you know, England. I was still in this whirlwind in my head of like, well, that's what you do. You come to LA. It's like it was this cartoon, it's like, well, of course. I mean, you show up at LA, and if you know what you're doing a little bit.
Right. That's how you get to Europe.
It was years later. I'm like, no, that was fantastic. Right. What an amazing thing.
It doesn't happen to everybody.
Yeah. So then I got through a mutual friend, a call from a guy at a church too. So I was also playing with a guy that became a great friend, Travis Taylor, at a church in Pacific Palisades. Mm. And that's also then how I met your friend, who's also been on this podcast.
Eric?
Yep.
Heileman.
Yep.
Erick Heileman. Yep. It was always confusing because in Sacramento we had two Ericks and they both played bass.
Oh, okay.
It's Erick Heileman and Erick Clevin.
Yeah.
They were both great players.
Yeah.
So me and Erick Heileman, we go way back. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was there, because there was a school there also, which is what
How'd you meet Jesse?
So I met Jesse through a friend that suggested. That's a funny story. The Jesse that
Jesse Taylor.
Yeah.
Folks.
So Travis Taylor, unrelated, the worship director at Calvary Church, had an opportunity to go do his music in Hungary for it was like a missionary conference of some sort. I forget what the organization was called right now, but anyway, we were looking for a bass player that was available. And the drummer we were using at the time, amazing drummer, great friend, also named Jesse, gets confusing. He said, my roommate can play bass, and he's a great musician. I forget exactly how he sold it, And so Travis was like, cool, bring him out. We'll try it out. So we all get together, and we're playing. And it sounded great. He's got this really kind of distinctive style, I love the way he plays bass. Mm-hmm. But this point is, it was after we went and did this trip. We had a great time. We actually formed a band, Jesse and I, with the other Jesse on that trip.
Okay.
That was a lot of fun. But we get home, and we learned then that Jesse goes, by the way, it's the first time I've ever played bass. He was actually like a bit of a guitar player, He had a Strat and loved writing songs.
Yeah.
So it was classic. You know him now, so it was classic. Yeah. Jesse is like, by the way, that was the first time I played bass. Which I love the fact that he just really wanted to get to Hungary, and experience.
He was hungry for Hungary.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So,
ooh. Man.
Anyway,
so and Richard just passed recently.
Yeah, he did last July 3rd. Not even a year. Yeah, very tragic. I'm so grateful for that time period.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. And then, see, how did I fill up the rest of those 13 years? Kept doing music stuff. We had a studio. At that church. And actually, it was designed by the guy that designed the Sound Kitchen in Franklin.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and what was his name? Names are flying out of my head right now, but the guy that designed that.
Yeah, so did he come here with the Elefantes and build that thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Chris, I think his name was. He actually went back to the days of, he was friends with John Lennon in Liverpool before the Beatles.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story if you talk to him. But he designed it, so it was small, really small, but a great little space. So just working on records out of there, and working on a lot of stuff, co-producing a lot of stuff with my friend Travis out of that studio. And, reached a point where Travis he was from Texas, and he was going back with his family. And long story short, they asked if I wanted to become the director of music there at the church. Mm-hmm. So I said, yeah. And coming from a musical background and how much pleasure and joy we get from playing music, what I was surprised about that, so I did that for 3 years leading up to moving back. Okay. What I was really surprised about that was my favorite part of it was kind of the non-musical part, and that was the connecting people, knowing this musician and connecting them, or if it was a scenario like lesser experienced musicians, kind of like encouraging. It was like all of that kind of stuff, that coach thing, I guess you'd call it. And I was really surprised, not to sound weird by saying that, but I was really surprised at how much I loved that. Mm-hmm. That was one of the hardest parts of leaving that scenario when we moved back. So,
So, you've been back how many years from LA?
it will be 2 next month.
So you're still fresh, huh?
Yeah, that's why.
Still freshly back.
Yeah, I'm just, it's a weird thing, Nashville, because I grew up here, as we've already talked about, and started working from here, and a lot of my community's from here, but it still feels like when you've been out, like you've been out of the loop, right? So there's still a part of it. It's all familiar. Like, I know all this, but I feel like, knocking on the door and scratching a bit and like, hey, can somebody let me in? It
a
still
lot
feels
changed
that way.
here in 13 years,
Yeah.
Some radical changes,
Yeah.
not only in the engineering or the architecture of the city or the engineering like developments and construction and all that stuff, but personally and sociologically, there are a lot of changes here. The way the things got done, and then you had Pro Tools enter the picture,
Right.
Studios closing.
Yep.
Not as many sessions anymore. A lot of A players taking road gigs.
Right.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
And so that dynamic has changed quite a bit. I came here in 1996 when it was just like almost like gold rush time.
Right.
And everybody was optimistic that pop music was going to be headquartered in Nashville.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what happened is country became rock and roll. And then it was like, oops, there's that.
There's that. Yeah, right. Where I remember growing up here, I'm a big fan of all the stuff that happened. Some of my biggest influences came out of Athens, Georgia, right? And so it was close enough in proximity to almost claim, it was the southern college town thing, right? So bands like REM. It's like I remember growing up here in Nashville and really wanting to claim them as my own hometown band.
And you met Stipe recently.
Well, we did recently, yeah. But wanting that to happen in Nashville, like with the rock scene that was happening in Athens, and just
the Americana thing happened here.
It did, yeah.
That's kind of like Americana is to country to what Athens was to like Madonna.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That
I
kind
do.
of music.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Can I use that?
Yeah, you can use that.
I'm going to use that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we of course Nashville then had like Kings of Leon, and that really popped even after I lived in California, and I remember feeling so much pride. Like, I mean, you could make the argument they're kind of Americana too, but it's still like it was a rock band, you know, and it was that went that far. Anyway, whatever.
So, what are you up to these days?
Talking to you
today
and tomorrow. No, it's been good, man. I've just been trying to dip my what's the right analogy? Dip my toe in many pools as I can, and I've had a lot of fun since coming back. All the trips that we've done together have been really great. I really loved shout out to my good friend Matthew Perryman Jones. Also, he asked me to go out and play bass on his tour last fall, and that was a blast. Not only to reconnect me in a bigger way with my first instrument, but just great people, great human beings.
How many shows did you do?
I want to say somewhere around 23. I hope I'm not selling that short or too long. I remember each half was like 10 to 12. It was 2 halves. We had a little break in the middle and played Nashville and all that.
Where'd you play here?
Basement East. And I'd only been there one other time for a show, so it was really cool to come back and play there, and it was a really great crowd that night. Cool. It was really cool, yeah.
Matthew's pretty popular here.
Yeah, he's a great artist, great writer.
Yeah.
Really. But that and love the stuff that we do together with Kevin, and we're talking about writing a rock record. In fact, he was texting me about it today. In his own funny way, he goes, let's do this fast because my attention span, I'll be off of it in no time. And I actually texted him, was like, bro, I'll call you soon, but I'm going to talk, to Aaron for this podcast. And he jokingly sent back a text that said, I'm already off it. Like he's off it. He's off the idea.
He's back to Spandau Ballet.
Right.
Just like that.
Just like that. So,
and Bowie.
Yeah. But I got a great, you know, like much like yourself here, I've got a room set up to bringing in, you know, a great little rig to record, you know, in that modern way, like you were just describing, of bringing in tracks and sending them back. I still love to go to studios, but like you said, that's becoming a more rare scenario. So yeah.
I did a record with Phil Madeira a couple of months back, and on today is Tuesday. On Friday, we went into the Sound Emporium, Studio A.
I love that.
And recorded 4 songs live and video. Oh,
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That would have been beautiful to watch.
It was pretty cool. And it should be out soon.
Wow.
Maybe in a month or so.
I can't wait for that. In that room A, I'm so glad that Sound Emporium or Ocean Way are still going. You know, I know it took the universities basically buying them for that to be feasible, but whatever it takes, I'm so glad
Belmont
they're still going. Belmont has Ocean Way. And obviously Lipscomb has Sound Emporium, right? I think.
Is Ocean Way RCA?
No.
Studio?
No. RCA is over on the 17th, over by,
okay.
I don't remember the crossroad. I think it's Chet Atkins and 17th.
All right.
Or 16th. Which one goes up? 16th. 17th comes down.
Goes up, yeah.
So,
who owns that? Who owns RCA?
You know, I'm not sure, but I do remember it being in the press recently for, you know, there were, it was almost gone. Not the original one where they have the tours, you know, where Elvis did his 60s output. But the building next to it, which was also legendary, but that one was in jeopardy of being torn down and condos, typical, being put there, and it was saved. And so, but I don't know what group saved it. Yeah. That wasn't long ago. But you know, I'm nostalgic that way. So I love the old studios, you know, and don't get me wrong, I love the convenience of going in my room and plugging into a great rig and doing it at home, you know, wearing my sweatpants and just doing it. But
I like coming here in my underwear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that, but I don't know if we could say underwear on the show. Oh, it's true.
You got any sessions or anything coming up?
You know, I'm talking to a guy out in LA that is an artist out in LA, and he's making a record. In fact, he's sending me some songs, so I might end up playing guitar and bass on that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So,
and you're going to do it from the confines of your little room in your underwear.
That's right. I'm going to do it in my underwear, which I wonder if that's going to affect the tone.
Well, you know, you won't have on clothes to absorb any of the sound waves.
Well, that's the scientific part of it. But I mean, like, my vibe wearing underwear, will it make me play differently versus if I was like really dressed up?
You should find out tonight.
Yeah,
you should like go home and try it out.
No,
you know, this is with clothes.
Yeah,
you know, play a couple of songs. This is without.
Yeah, that's a great point. My wife's always talking about, you know, dressing to feel better, you know, and everything, and
to feel the.
She says that after I've spent 3 days in my sweatpants, I think. But it's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah, I played with this guy Peter Built, who had played with a band called Pearl Harbor and the Explosions.
Okay,
and Pearl, the lead singer, you know, got those guys. She said, if we're going to be a band, we have to always be that band. So she insisted that they dress as if they were going on stage all the time. It had to be like,
I get it. Wow, it's brilliant. Yeah,
you know,
it's cool.
It made sense.
Yeah, I know it does. It really does.
People do it. You know,
yeah.
I don't know if they thought about doing it, but it makes sense.
Well, you do feel different depending on what gear you're wearing, even in any situation. You know,
right.
If the gear is right, everything's right.
Right. That's true.
So, but no, so I'm excited. You know, always. Is this a good time to send me your songs and I'll play on them?
Send songs to Erick Cole.
That's right. But I still love it all as much as I always did, man. The songwriting, I love all aspects. Playing, I love doing live shows. I love it all. Genuinely, that's not a shtick.
Yeah, I hope we get to do some shows soon.
Me too.
January's always kind of like a dead month.
I know. I used to dread, I love Christmas. I really love Christmas. And I know most people love New Year's Eve and New Year's Day and all that. And there was something that always made me feel like I was dreading it. And I couldn't really access why. Like, I couldn't come up with why that is. But I really think it's related to, I just know that January it's just that month where it's like, hey, everybody, what's happening? Is anyone out there? It's like the echo.
Here.
Is anyone out there?
Right. Hello.
Yeah, exactly. So that's true.
Yeah. True. And then, just kind of, everything kind of like takes a deep breath and starts to come back in February. It's like I was telling Susan the other day. I said, oh babe, get ready, we're about to go to like that dark period. She went, what dark period? I said, there's no more football.
Oh, I know, right?
The only thing on TV is going to be like basketball,
right?
And they're not going to be really playing because they got like 100 odd games to go, before it really heats up. And we're going to have to like start taking walks on Sunday and stuff like that, going to the farmer's market.
Yeah, totally. No, I can relate. Sports. I love baseball is my favorite. Which and I get on board with football. So it's funny. The minute the Super Bowl's over until spring training, that zone, I'm just like, it's hard to get excited about wearing my favorite hats or anything. It's like, no, it's happening. It's just over.
Dig it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's time for us to bid adieu to our audience here. And
let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah,
can we do this again? Quick. And the next time, I just want to talk to you about playing with James Jamerson.
Maybe we'll talk.
Yeah, I just threw him on the spot. Okay, wait on.
But I want to thank you for coming to the show today.
I appreciate you asking me
and talking to us. And
loved it.
Yeah, do those sessions in your underwear, please.
I will.
And
festive boxers.
Yes. I'll see you in Bilbo Wagons soon.
All right.
Peace out.
Thank you.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.